Alrighty, hello. So this is the last bit of chapter 4, so we are wrapping it up. So we're moving pretty quickly through the first 100 years or so. This is going to put us up through after the French and Indian War, which will directly lead up to the American Revolution. Okay, so your key events during this time period are going to be the British War against French in America. So this is going to cause an increase in trade of American debt to the British and an increase in westward migration. And this is going to lead to violence and rebellion because westward migration means moving Indians. All right. So you have this oh, I didn't change the slide. Sorry. There we go. The conflict in the Ohio Valley. So in the 1750s, the French authorities, they're alarmed by the British moving into Ohio. So they're going to build a bunch of defensive forts. You have a British governor, I love this name, Dinwiddie. All right, British Governor Dinwiddie. He dispatched a military expedition led by our friend George Washington. So this is going to be one of the first things George Washington really does that's going to start to give him his name that he's going to earn that will eventually get him to the level of the president and being our first president. So he goes to reassert British claims. So he's part of the British Army. All right. So this is going to result in an international incident that is going to prompt Virginian and British expansionists to demand war. So in this war that we have here, the French and Indian War that happens here in the United States is part of the larger French and British War that's going on and goes on for a while. So June of 1754, we have delegates from British colonies that are going to meet in Albany to discuss relations with the Iroquois and just French expansion in general. And I should have put it in here, and I guess I forgot. But I have a flag in my classroom, join or die. So this is when Franklin puts together the join or die with the snake that's all disjointed. And basically he's saying, we all need to join and work together. So Franklin proposes his Albany Plan of Union at the Albany Congress. He wants a continental assembly to manage trade, Indian policy, and just defense in the Western territories. And this is supposed to counter the French expansion or the French policies. His efforts are not successful. And so this is going to make this war between France and England imminent. Let's see. You do have people who are all for the war. So people who are not interested, they don't want it. But you have a group of people that we will call the War Hawks. You have William Pitt and Lord Halifax in England who want a war in North America with the French. So they're going to try and start inciting people. And so you're going to have a group of congressmen that will be called the War Hawks, and they're going to be the ones who are really going to encourage war as well. Well, I guess we would call them congressmen today. They weren't really congressmen. They were just leaders in this society. So, excuse me, fighting is going to start in June of 1755, excuse me. And it's going to expand to Europe by 1756. So Britain is going to vow to destroy France's ability to compete economically. We do consider the French and Indian War to start in 1754. We will be doing something on that next week or this week, depending on when you're listening to this. But in relationship to, we will talk about Chapter 4 and the French and Indian War, so we'll get some more information there. But the fighting will begin. Like I said, it's part of a larger war that France and Great Britain are having. Here are your French claims, and you can see it's quite a bit of land. All of Louisiana. Remember, that's who we get the Louisiana Purchase from. You have your British claims, which are going to be where the colonies are. The Spanish claims, which is largely going to be in the south and nearer to Mexico. And then you can see the striped parts. Those are your disputed claims. The areas that both countries are trying to say that they get. So the area over to the Ohio is what the French and the British are arguing over, and down the top part of Florida is part of what Britain and Spain are arguing about. So you do have a lot of information there. All right, this is Chief of the Mohawks. His name is Chief Hendrick. He is a British ally in the 7 Years' War, or the French and Indian War is what we call it here. His dress, you can see, is that of a British soldier. And this is British recognition of his support during the war and elevation of his regular status. So obviously this is a painting, it's not a photograph. I'm not entirely sure he ever wore that, but that's how they're going to paint him. His presentation with a tomahawk and a wampum belt reveals that both the subject and the artist also valued his status as a Mohawk warrior. So he's both. All right. American artists might have painted him similarly. He's an ally of Americans and British, and both sides would want to honor him. And this would be considered an honor by the British. All right. Let's see, the 7 Years' War. So William Pitt's going to direct the war successfully from England from 1756 to 1763. He's going to control both the commercial and the military strategies. The British have stunning successes, and they're going to acquire Cuba and the Philippines from Spain. This will eventually go back to Spain. I don't know when they get it back, but they will eventually take it back because we will get it from, or they'll win independence later, and we'll get the Philippines from Spain later. French, Senegal, Martinique, and Guadeloupe also are coming from them, and so that's eventually returned to France. The Treaty of Paris in 1763 is going to end this war, giving Britain control of over half of North America, including French Canada. Okay, so I will not often tell you you need to know dates, but there are 3 Treaty of Parises for sure that we will talk about during our study of U.S. history. So you want to make sure that you know the dates on the Treaty of Paris. So this is 1763. There will be a later Treaty of Paris, which will end the Revolutionary War, and there's another one that I can't think of right now, but we also have the Treaty of Versailles. We just really like to go to France and declare peace. So know the date for this one. 1763 is going to end the 7 Years' War, the French and Indian War that's occurring here in America, or in the colonies. So the Treaty of Paris is going to end the war. It's going to give Britain control of over half of North America, including French Canada. You have Pontiac's Rebellion that's going to occur. You've got British acquisitions in North America. They're going to frighten the Native American population, and they believe that they would lose more territory to Anglo-American migrants. It's inspired by a Delaware prophet. His name is Neolin. The Ottawa chief Pontiac, with a group of loosely affiliated tribes, are going to launch an uprising against the British. So that's why it's called Pontiac's Rebellion, because he is the chief of the Ottawa chief. It is put down. However, what it's going to result in is the Proclamation of 1763. And so this proclamation is going to be one of the other things that's going to lead to the revolution. So it's one of the things that's going to start to cause strict control of the British over the American colonists. So basically it's going to prohibit white settlement west of the Appalachians. The colonists aren't going to really pay attention to it, but it is still in place, and there will be times that they try to enforce it. All right, so French and Indian War. So George Washington, so that's going to be, I want to say, I'm not sure, but in the wagon is General Braddock. General Braddock is going to die at a battle during the French and Indian War, and this is the same battle that George Washington will be on a horse, and they will shoot his horse out from underneath him, and he will survive it without any kind of injury. And so this is where George Washington is going to start getting his larger-than-life persona and his reputation. So during this battle, he's at this battle as well, and he kind of walks by General Braddock, and General Braddock gives him his sword. I think it's his sword. Yeah. And basically, this is really going to cement George Washington into this leadership role that he will take on. And Braddock does die at this battle in July of 1755. Okay, this is a map of the movement of the British and the victories. So you can see several British victories with the little red stars, very few French victories. The British will win this war. Yeah, so that's what you need to know. All All right. So since 1700, Britain has become the dominant commercial power in the Atlantic, especially because they're limiting trade in the colonies, there's navigation acts, etc., etc. And so they are dominating trade in the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. By 1750, it's also becoming the first nation to use manufacturing technology and work discipline to expand output. So the Industrial Revolution will hit Great Britain in the 1700s, way before it hits the United States. Well, it will be the United States by the time we get the Industrial Revolution. It'll be the early 1800s before we can really say we've had our Industrial Revolution. So Great Britain is going to experience this first. Mechanical power is the key to their Industrial Revolution, and this is what really gets them going into manufacturing and whatnot. Artisans are going to design and build water mills and steam engines that are going to power a wide array of machines. So you have lathes for shaping wood, spinning jennies and looms for spinning and weaving textiles, and hammers for iron forging. So these are going to be things that are going to be unique in Britain. And the funny thing is, this is on a side note, I doubt this is in your book, but there was laws against British people bringing their technology to the colonies. And later to the United States. And so we experience our Industrial Revolution when a British guy steals the plans and comes over to the United States and opens a factory. So there you go. All right. American consumers are soon purchasing 30% of all British exports. So everything coming out of Britain, we are purchasing 30% of that. To pay for the British manufacturers, mainland colonists are going to export tobacco, rice, indigo, and wheat. So they are going to send, so we will send raw goods to Great Britain. Great Britain will sell us manufactured goods. It is not going to be a balanced trade. It's not like tit for tat kind of thing. It is going to definitely be in Great Britain's favor the entire time. New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia are going to supply wheat to Europeans. Profits from those exports are going to enable them to buy goods from England. And we definitely become dependent on overseas credit and markets. So like I said, they can't always afford all these things that they're purchasing, but it's creating such a consumer atmosphere and such a consumer society that it just becomes the way things are. And I would say it's still that way today. We have a heavily consumer society. All right. Rising population of the colonies obviously means we need more land. You're going to be a lot of disputes over land. You're going to have uprisings in the Hudson River Valley of New York and New Jersey. You're going to have some in some southern colonies. Courts are going to always favor the wealthy landowners. And the landless are going to start to move west of the Appalachian Mountains region, despite the proclamation of 1763. So I just realized my paper has been on top of my mic, so hopefully you have heard everything I've said. All right. Last one. So during the 7 Years' War, Anglo-Americans and Scottish settlers in South Carolina are going to clash with the Cherokee. So they're going to be fighting with the people that are in Florida. All right. So movement of landless into the West is going to mean these clashes over these Indian policies, political representations, debts, etc. All right. So-called regulators were vigilante landowners who demanded that South Carolina's Eastern-controlled government provide Western districts with more courts, fairer taxation, and greater representation in the Assembly for those who had settled in the region. South Carolina regulators were unsuccessful in gaining power from the Eastern elite. They just weren't willing to give it up. 1766 is going to see a significant economic crisis in North Carolina because tobacco prices will start to fall. When tobacco prices start to fall, this is actually going to cause an issue with the need for slaves as well. All right. So to avoid losing their land, you have mobs of farmers, also called regulators, closed the courts and intimidated the judges. They proposed a series of reforms, including legislation to lower their legal fees and taxes. May of 1771, North Carolina's royal governor is going to try and suppress the rebellion. Violence is going to ensue, and it's going to end with 30 men dead and 7 regulator leaders executed. So it's not entirely successful or unsuccessful. It's definitely, and it's really a signal of the coming times as people try to fight for what they believe they should have. So you're going to have a lot of strife that's going to be occurring over the next 30 years or so, as we get toward, well, actually, I guess the next 10 to 15 years, as people start to decide that what they have is not enough and that they want a different way of life. So anyway, that will get us through the end of chapter 4. We will start with chapter 5 next week. So I hope you have a good afternoon, evening, or morning. Bye.